Welcome, Dr. James Beckett, SportsCard Insights. I'm trying to come up with themes or questions that are not being asked by others and approaching it in a way where not everybody's going to get an equal amount out of each episode, but many of my listeners and viewers do enjoy the bouncing around of it. And this is something that I haven't heard anybody do. Well, let me first thank my sponsors, Beckett Media, Beckett Rating, Beckett Authentication, ComC.com, Burbank Sports Cards, Mike Stadium Sports Cars, Heritage Auctions, Hugs and Scott Auctions, Topps, Panini, and Upper Deck. So I'm minding my own business, and a friend of mine invited me to a very nice lunch. It was a free lunch, and it was about yachts, the benefits of owning a yacht or chartering a yacht or living on a yacht. And I thought, I clearly do not get that. That would be like a prison for me. Because if I was going to live on a yacht or be on a yacht for a while, I don't think I'd be taking my cards with me. Now, we could have a nice family vacation, but it's quite expensive. And what's going to happen to my cards? So I started thinking, well, where do my cards live? Or where should my cards live? Where should I live? Where should you live if you want to be the best collector you can be? And I'm telling you right now, it's not on a boat. It's not on a yacht. It's not on a sailboat. It's not on a houseboat. One of the enemies of cards is water. Another enemy is fire. I wouldn't want to do the test of whether the BGS slabs float. I don't think they do float, and I think they probably withstand water up to a point. But if you're out in the ocean or in the bay, not a good thing. So again, being facetious about that. But I just found out the yachts are even more expensive than I thought. I wasn't considering it, but I just wondered. I have a couple friends that do that. I thought, what do they get out of that? Well, what they get out of it is what I don't want, and that is to break from their normal routine and get away from their stuff. I don't want to get away from my stuff. I have a hobby that I love interacting with on a regular basis, and I really have a collection. You can't take it with you. I suppose if I had a Zion case or some kind of a fill it all in one box, but that's not the way I hobby. So yachting, clearly not for me. So then I started thinking, well, where have I lived and what are the best places for cards? And many of you will have experienced some of these things. Leading off, obviously, almost everybody starts living with their parents. Well, is that a good place for your cards? Actually, no. It can be a terrible place for your cards. All the litany of stories I've heard from so many people who say that, my cards were in my childhood home, and when I went away to college or whatever, I came back and they were gone. And my mom or my dad, but usually it's blamed on the mom, threw out my cards. Now, not every mom or dad or parent threw out cards, but hopefully in the last decades, there'd be some perception that cards are worth more compared to 40 or 50 years ago, that parents don't throw out the cards. But if you're living under your parents' roof, they're the bosses. And if they want a clean house, they can. So my cards started out being in my parents. And like I said, when my mom threw out my dupes, she did not throw out the cards I got from my dad. I had a wonderful mom. Number two, I moved from my parents' house to the dorm at college. And in the dorm, I did not bring my cards. So my cards are still at home because, frankly, the dorm is not as safe as the parents. Even though my parents moved a few times, my cards were boxed up. I worry about providing opportunity for theft, which could be an inside job or a crime of opportunity or random theft, or you've got some kind of a natural disaster, a flood, fire, hurricane or tornado or something like that. So the dorm, if I'd have just put it in my drawer, in my closet, my roommate or somebody passing by could say, hey, that looks interesting. I think I'll help myself. So I wouldn't have put them in my dorm, and I don't think that's a good solution. Third, toward my latter years in college and grad school, I lived in an apartment and I always had roommates. Again, I'm very blessed with great friends, so I had really high integrity roommates. On the other hand, they have friends. Somebody could have come over and said, hey, one of my roommates, this Jim Beckett guy, he collects baseball cards. Oh, I'd like to see him. Oh, he keeps them in his closet. They're not locked up. And they could just look through and say, hey, those look nice. Surely I could just borrow a few. So apartment, not safe. Okay. I never had a theft there, but in the last couple of years, I did have cards there, because I was starting to get more active in collecting. And so I bought some collections and they were there. But like I said, I was blessed to have great roommates who were not tempted. They probably didn't know what they were worth, but they knew they were important to me. Fourth, I was in the barracks at the Army. It was officer barracks. And I did have not all my cards, but I had some cards there because I bought some collections when I was at Fort Bliss, when I put an ad in the paper, and then on the weekend, because I had my car there, and I just would drive around and answer the ads in the newspaper for buying baseball cards. And I bought some really great collections. And then I brought him back and I put him in the barracks. Well, it was a 2-man officer barracks room. So it wasn't the big thing like I did in my boot camp where there's 40 guys in the same room. But there were 2 guys, and he wasn't a collector at all. And he was a tough guy and a fair guy, straight shooter. And so I just kept him in the closet. And it was probably multiple shoe boxes, but not monster boxes. They didn't have those in those days. So that was sort of safe, but that was a 3-month stint as well. From there, I moved to my own apartment where I controlled the thing. I was either an apartment at first, and then I wound up buying a home. And that was, then you have complete control in terms of locking up, alarming. I wasn't insured at that point. I don't think the value is that great. And I wasn't fully alarmed in the first couple of apartments or houses. That wasn't as big a deal. But I had a spare bedroom. I went from having a closet to a spare bedroom with a desk in it so I could sort cards to then one of the houses, as we kept doing better and getting a bigger and better house, it seemed like, we then wound up having a house with a safe room. And so it was like a secret room that had a magnetic, it was behind some shelves. This is 2 houses ago, so it may still be there, but the cards aren't there. And people, when they came over, I really rarely went in there. It was a safe place. At that point, I also had the company. So we had a card room that was locked up in our corporate headquarters for Beckett Publications, and that was safe. And there was insurance there, and the value started creeping up because now we're into the late 80s, the 90s. A lot of people have a closet. Is it a locking closet, a spare bedroom? Is it locked? Like I said, I had a safe room. But it wasn't fireproof, but I don't think there would have been a theft. I guess if somebody held me at gunpoint, I'd say, okay, here's the combination, but your money or your life, here's the money or here's the cards. And then lastly, parallel with this, I had a barn for a while, and some people in the company, it was a big barn, and I put an air-conditioned part in there to keep climate control for cards. That's when I had too many cards, and there were some shelves in there, and it was alarmed and very secure. The other thing for flood, if you had a water leak or a lot of rain or a roof leak or something like that, at some point I realized the flood prevention is making sure nothing's on the floor, that it's up 6 inches off the floor. And for fire, there's always insurance, not adjusters, but insurance savvy. Your agent comes and does a walkthrough and says, hey, that's a fire hazard, or you shouldn't do that, because they don't want to have a loss of any kind. And then as far as hurricanes and tornadoes, we've lost power. That tornado was 2 miles away, and I would have thought we'd picked a location that was pretty safe from that. But more and more, there are extreme weather events, and we were 2 or 3 miles away from a tornado that cut through, and that would have just, and where my cards, or many of them, again, the valuable ones are at the bank, which is the safest home for your cards, is a vault, whether it's a bank vault like I have, or some of the vaults that are third-party vaults in the industry, including my old company that has one. So I've got a back house now. It's a separate structure, again, alarmed, insured, it's squared away and not a problem, but that's why I need to reduce by 1%, because I want to have less, because I don't want to have a larger area for it. I want to have less cards that I can take better care of. Very secure. Surely if something happened, I'd be unhappy, but my most valuable cards are at the bank, and that's safer than any house where I have lived. I've had a lot of different houses. I've been successful. Many people live in the same house. But I guess my point would be the people live in the same house for 40 years are not always the ones that are buying the goats. Sometimes they are. And if they are, they're probably using the vaults. So this goes together. The other thing I haven't brought up, living in a foster home, there's some horrible situations out there. I do a lot of pro bono work, and I met with the group that's dealing with the homeless. Well, if you're homeless and you got baseball cards, good luck. You're going to keep them in your shopping cart. That just would be horrible. Again, if you were going to be homeless, you'd probably sell your cards to try to feed your family and shelter your family. The other problem, I'm not against insurance, but I just think insurance, the cards that are insured, the ones that I would be listing are exactly the ones that I have in the bank. And the other cards are the dollar box cards that I bought that I haven't dealt with, and I have an accumulation of those, a large accumulation of those. It's probably not worth insuring those. So I'm trying to transact those. Nevertheless, if they were to be insured, I'd still rather have the cards than the money. And that's, you're a collector if you'd rather have the card than the money. If the card is a $100 card, you say, well, here's $100 for the card. No, I just like the card. Not that you'll have it the rest of your life, but you're really a true collector If somebody offers you a fair price for your card and you say, no, I'd rather just have it. Again, if it's a $1,000 card, $10 card, $100 card, there's a price for each person. And frankly, the SportsCard Insight might be, according to where you live, ought to affect your strategy, because there's some people, I've said this before, sometimes you pull some card out of a pack. There are cards you could pull out of a pack, which would allow you to significantly upgrade your house and your neighborhood. A lot of the aspect of where you live is not just the house you're in, but the neighborhood you're in, what part of town, how safe it is, how secure it is. And so some of these cards that you could pull or find could change the trajectory of your home ownership for you and your family. When you keep that in mind, you just think, I want to have things in perspective. I believe I've done that, but at this point, I'm selling more than I'm buying in order to have a more manageable collection that doesn't overwhelm, because I'm sure Diane and I are going to downsize at some point in the future. And when we do, it needs to be not just downsizing our furniture or our square footage, but downsizing my cards too. And I'd rather do that not in a hurry or in a distress sale. I'd rather do it systematically like I'm doing. So take a look at where you're living and how secure it is for your cards. Like I said, even if you had insurance, if something happened, it'd be a bittersweet day to get an insurance check in place of the cards that you've painstakingly accumulated over the years. And for me, since childhood. So thanks, everybody. What started out as just a simple lunch to hear about this world of yachting that I have no interest in, but I can see how people would like it. But like I said, to me, it takes me away from the hobby, not for me. So thanks, everybody. See you in a couple of days.